Hello. My name is Brady, and this is my start to my daily documentation of my journey through the summer and my religious life. All right, I guess I'll start with an intro here. I'm Brady. I was born and baptized in a Roman Catholic church, and I got communion later on. I was never confirmed, but yeah. Growing up, I went to CCD, which is like a Catholic Sunday school. I never really thought about religion or God at all. It was in the back of my mind. And I kind of just lived my life acting on impulse and whatever feels good for, I want to say 14 years up until I kind of thought about God. And one day I decided that I just want to go to church. And I started going for 6 months every Sunday, but I still never thought about God. I never really put a thought into outside the church. It was more so, I'm gonna give God an hour in the church, and the other 100+ hours outside of that, it's all to myself. So, yeah. And then eventually in September, following that, 2 years ago, I decided to get a Bible, and I started to read it. I wasn't reading like a book though. I was reading just random verses that I would look up because the Bible's confusing. I didn't understand how to read it exactly, right? And that's when I really decided it's just me and my Bible alone. I don't need guidance. Yeah, that's a bad thing. And later on, I started to actually surrender my life to God, and I started to, question more about my life, look at my environment, what's good, what's bad. Started to move things around. I started to put myself around better people, and then I stopped. It got hard for me, and I quit. I didn't quit, but I put God in the back seat and really let my desires drive me everywhere. And I would be convicted every single day. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And I would just ignore it and just keep doing my own thing because that's all I knew. And it really wouldn't be until I was in class and I heard kids arguing about certain stuff about early church. And I'm like, why does it matter? Why does stuff about men matter? And then as I thought about it more and like looked it up at home, I'm like, well, how Christianity was expressed in the early 1st through 5 centuries, it was really radical and hardcore. I mean, they were facing persecution from like the churches in the West, all the Roman Empire. Churches in the East, just I'm not even sure who, but persecution. Like there was martyrs, people who died for their faith. They had the whole churches underground, the Roman catacombs, like underground, in houses. Yeah, it wasn't until Constantine legalized Christianity in the Byzantine Empire. In his on his journey to the Edict of Milan, when he saw the cross in the sky and it said, "By this sign you shall conquer." He was the first leader to legalize Christianity and then to embrace it, and that was a big explosion that was needed for Christianity to spread worldwide. But and then I really started to deep dive into my Roman Catholic background and my belief, and I started to look more and more, and I'm like, yo, this is so much deeper than just me and my Bible alone. Like nobody lived that way back then. Like if you could go back to 3rd century, right? Or 6th century when they had the Bible, like everyone who was Christian was a part of the church. There was no independent apologetics outside the church, inside the church. Anyway, back to myself. I started to read more history, and I started to become so much more like faithful. I started to really shift around my friends, those kids that I heard arguing. I'm like really close to them now. We hang out, we read the Bible together, we go to Bible studies, we talk about our faith. I'm growing so close with the people that I love, and in turn, growing with those you love, you might have to depart from those you also love, the ones who are weeds in your garden. If you want to cultivate your garden, weeds are only going to ruin it. But humans are different than weeds. Weeds are set to their biological pattern to suck up nutrients. But humans can change. Humans can grow. That's the great thing about character development and the beauty of it is people can change. Like myself, like I was pretty much agnostic, and now I'm really religious. I'm really faithful. But it comes to a point where people don't want to change, or people can't change, or no, people can change, but it's not your will. You can't do it. You can only show your fruit and only speak on your behalf, but you can't force them to change. A person who doesn't want to be saved cannot be saved. My friend told me that a couple of days ago, and I really thought on it, and that makes a lot of sense. People want to be saved when they allow themselves to be saved. Once you surrender your problems, things get better. But not everyone does that. People want to, be thug cold-hearted or hold to to their character, and they can't change because of that. It's sad. Where was I? But weeds change. Some people, you realize that they don't want to change, so you have to cut yourself off from them. And out of that, there's someone I loved, someone I deeply loved, and it felt that for the longest time maybe I can change them, but my actions weren't following my words. I wasn't being a good example. I wasn't leading. I wasn't walking the talk. And I realized that this is only going to hold me down if I hold on to them. So I broke my own heart to save my soul. I broke my own heart out of my own will in order to stay focused on my life. And that's the thing I think they should teach in school with mental health, where if you're going to depart from someone, or someone departs from you, like in a relationship, and you need to move on, you need to cut it off. Or like I tried, and people try this, cut it off and then hold on to them just by a thread. Like I say, like I want to drop this pencil, right? I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna hold on to just right here. I'm not using it. Like, no, you need to cut it off, because that subconscious thought that, oh, maybe they'll come back. No, it's you will never heal. You're only gonna poison your own mind. You're only gonna poison yourself if you don't let go. So yeah, I'm going through that right now. But I trust in God. I trust in His plan. I surrender myself. I will do this because I want to be a presentable adult. I want to be an adult. I want to be a grown, mature adult moving into college, and not someone stuck on problems I can't handle. I want to face my problems and deal with it, not push it off to later. There is no tomorrow. Like you're not guaranteed another day. So yeah. Growing up, I was baptized in church, thankfully by my parents. Roman Catholic Church. I was not religious at all for 14 years. Then I went to church, then I read, then I forgot, then I actually read and comprehended and looked at history. I'm like, yo, this is so deep and important. Then I became religious. But I faced a roadblock, and I will explain this more in tomorrow. But I'm currently inquiring to be Eastern Orthodox, because there are things that I just can't accept in the Roman Catholic Church. Things that I don't believe in body Christ. No matter how technical you get, the goalpost is being shifted to a term that's later defined, and then a term that is defined against that. It contradicts. I'll get into that tomorrow. But let's get to my faith real quick. Sorry, my phone storage was full. Anyways, on the topic of suffering, why does God allow suffering? We can break this down to, if God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and perfectly loving, why does suffering happen? First, I use that term perfectly loving instead of all-loving because people like to twist the definition of all-loving into, oh, well, He loves pedophiles and He can send a good person to hell because they don't believe in Him. I'm using the term perfectly loving. It's much better because People take it out of context. Okay. 1. The general consensus is suffering, to an extent, builds spiritual development and character development. It's spiritual endurance. It builds your character. I think even the atheists can agree that, to an extent, suffering makes you a better person. That's why the best of athletes are trialed. You know, the best lawyers are the ones who can stand trial. The best lawyers are the ones who can defend the best. You know, people that go through trials and come out on top are the ones who the winners. Winners are just losers who tried again. So suffering makes you a better person. But to the extent of suffering, like torture or death, here's the point. God made human in his image. God made man in his image. But due to the fall of Adam and Eve, people don't inherit the guilt, but people will sin. Sin happens because we have free will. Free will is God allowing us to choose him or not. So when people say, oh, God sends them to hell, no. You send yourself to hell because you chose not to be with him. And the understanding of hell is much more complex than eternal burning fire. I'll get into that later, tomorrow maybe, or next other day. But the point is that because someone chooses free will to hurt someone else, that isn't God's fault. That's the person's fault. But why would God allow that? Now, for us to try to understand why God would make a selection of something which is not written down is almost impossible, because finite minds cannot understand infinite beings. Like, for example, Saint Augustine of Hippo, 4th century. He was an early church father. He wrote in one of his writings that he was walking on a beach and he saw a little boy playing in the sand, and the boy made a cup in the sand, like a little hole, and he tried to put the whole ocean in the sand. Saint Augustine said, "Boy, what are you doing trying to fill the whole ocean in the sand?" And he said, "I can't. Just like you're trying to fit the Trinity in your head, the Holy Trinity." So the point is that you can't understand God. Trying to define God by human logic is an impossible task. We can understand to an extent, but to understand why he does certain things, that's not for our doing. You have to trust. Now, I'm not saying blindly believe everything you know, but we can put a pretty good point together why suffering happens. Suffering happens, if someone hits you, oh, why am I suffering from this? Because they just hit you with their own free will. That's not God's fault. Natural diseases and causes. So that came with the fall of Adam and Eve. Death entered the world through sin, right? And that's going to happen. But through that, people come closer to God if they choose to. When you have nothing, when you have nothing at all, no material belongings or anything at all, you can only go to God. I'm not saying God makes people suffer because they can go to him, but suffering happens, and through that you can see his glory. Now, me personally, I haven't gone through a great amount of, I wouldn't say suffering like people in third world countries or people who are very poor. I am extremely grateful for what my parents do for me, my family. But I go through battles, a lot of spiritual warfare, I would say. You know, a certain conviction and temptation. Temptation's a big one. I'm gonna get to that. Temptations is a force being acted upon you for you to feel inclined to do something. Like, let's say your friends are begging you to come to the casino, but you know that you can't spend that money to save it. I mean, you might be tempted to go, but if you really want to succeed in life, you can't let your heart lead the way. You have to let your mind lead the way. And really, you let God lead the way. But put your trust in God, and things will come out soon. Things will come out good. You will suffer. When you become a Christian, you will suffer. Becoming a Christian isn't, oh, everything's good, I have a moral law now, I'm with God, blah, blah, blah. No, Becoming a Christian is embracing spiritual warfare. It's embracing persecution, oppression. It is embracing the fact that you're surrendering everything to God, all your desires. If you have faith in Jesus Christ and you want to hold on to one thing in your life, you don't want to stop smacking your wife or beating your wife out of anger. You're not letting God lead your life. This is like moving on from an ex. If you want to truly heal, you have to let go. Because same thing with an ex. If you let it go, but you shoot her a text every week, or you agree to be friends, so you can stay in contact, or you just check her map, check her location every day, you're not letting go, and you won't heal. You have to pull that weed out of your garden. So in order to grow, if you want God to cultivate your garden, you have to pull that weed. You have to pull it out. There's no other way you can do it. There's no other way. I tried to work around that for a year, but that's what's gonna leave you messed up. Because you'll come to the same conclusion that you have to let it all go. You have to suffer. You have to embrace suffering. If you pray to God about suffering, I would not try to pray, Lord, please remove suffering from my life. No. In order to embrace God's will and live by God's will, you should pray to endure suffering and stay strong through it. Because suffering produces endurance. And in Matthew 24:13 it says, those who endure to the end shall be saved. This is day 1.